YouTube has decided to not share my videos with everyone who subscribes. Please follow me on social media to stay up to date. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel. And, let me ask you guys a question. When is it that jokes died? Can we pinpoint an exact date when a stupid, off-the-cuff, old-timey joke ends up trying to kind of steamroll this dude's career? I mean, in the Me Too era, it feels like anything you say can be and will be used against you in the public court of opinion. But in this particular case, this was nothing more than just an elevator joke about women's lingerie. One you've heard multiple times, one that's been part of pop culture for many, many, many years. Because that's where we find ourselves with this guy right here, Richard Ned Lebow, who just made an elevator joke that one woman called offensive, and he called her complaint frivolous. Who was right is obviously the question being posed here on the Washington Post. But I mean, I think we can all pretty much right off the bat say he is. She might be offended by the joke, but what right is it of hers to be offended? We go back to that there too. It's all like, why, if she's offended, that's on her. That's not on him. Anyway, let's find out more here. So, ladies' lingerie. It was a lame, outmoded joke. The sort of thing you say in a crowded elevator to alleviate the discomfort of being jammed among strangers, an artifact of the days of fancy department stores with operators announcing the floor stops. Like I said, it's just, next stop, women's lingerie or ladies' lingerie. It's not an out of, we all kind of know it through pop culture, right? I've never gone to a department store that had an operator elevator, but, you all kind of know about it, and it's really harmless. It's stupid harmless, really. Now, those two words, the speaker remembers saying, ladies' lingerie, a passenger who was offended recalls hearing women's lingerie, have turned into the latest exemplar of the Academy, or in the Academy of Political Correctness gone wild. Yes, this is political correctness gone wild. Once again, the horrors of the early 1990s have reared their ugly head 25 years later, something we thought we had fought back against. It's back in ways that are just getting more and more and more malicious and just ridiculous, but they're here. This episode, which has not been previously reported, occurred last month in San Francisco, which kind of seems to make sense that this would come out of San Francisco, at the annual meeting of the International Studies Association. Richard Ned Lebow, a professor of political theory at King's College London, and the 2014 recipient of the ISA's Distinguished Scholar Award, made the remark after someone in his elevator called out to ask for floor requests. Simona Sharoni, a professor of women and gender studies at Merrimack College in Massachusetts, took offense. Of course. Not only in San Francisco, but it's a women and gender studies professor out of Massachusetts. It would only be more perfect, and I just mean this literally. It would only be more perfect if she came out of Berkeley. It would only be more perfect. It would just be like, oh yes, you're a stereotype. Check that box, because that's quite literally all that. Of course. Right now, as she recounted in a formal complaint lodged less than 4 hours later, Lebow said with a smile on his face, women's lingerie, and all of his buddies laughed. After they walked out, the woman standing next to me turned to me and said, I wonder if we should have told them that this is no longer acceptable to make these jokes. Yes, because somebody would actually say that probably in public. The men leave the elevator. The woman, just exacerbated, turns to the other. Someone should tell them in 2018, in current year, it's not appropriate to make these jokes. Again, I'm going to probably argue that probably never happened. Now, it took me a while to figure out that this man thought it was funny to make a reference to men shopping for lingerie while attending an academic conference. I'm still trying to come to terms with the fact that we froze and didn't confront him. As a survivor of sexual harassment in the academy, I'm quite shaken by this incident. I'm going to echo his response to this and simply call it frivolous. Because that's what it is. This is completely freaking frivolous. The dude's on an elevator with some people. Someone puts out a call for floor requests, and he goes, women's lingerie, right? And everyone's like, that's an old-timey joke. You're an old-timey person. That's funny. You're funny. We should get a drink. And then they walk out. Oh God, no, the horror. 2 words. As a victim of sexual harassment in academia, I'm quite shaken by the incident. No, you're not. You're not shaken by the incident. If the person next to you in the elevator says, I wonder if we should have told them this is no longer acceptable to make these jokes. At that point, that theory, that mindset has been implanted in your brain, or it was already there and you just manufactured the person. Again, I have no idea. But if that person did say it to you, then that's probably where the idea came from. It's that whole notion of like, am I the victim here? Well, I'm a women and gender studies professor, so obviously I'm a victim for everything. Yes, I'm totally the victim. It's a ridiculous mindset to have. It's a dumb joke. If anything, you go find the guy later on and just go, I thought the joke was stupid. And he'll be like, I'm sorry that you're offended. Did you care for a spot of tea? Hey, it's a good thing he didn't ask you. It's a good thing he didn't ask her to go back to his room for a cup of coffee. Okay, we don't need Elevator Gate 2.0. However, this might actually be Elevator Gate 2.0. So Lebow, informed of the complaint, wrote what he said was intended to be a conciliatory response, assuring Sharoni that I certainly had no desire to insult women or make you feel uncomfortable, and suggested that Sharoni, born in Romania and raised in Israel, may have interpreted my remark out of context, which is entirely possible. If she was born in Romania and raised in Israel, I don't know the culture of department stores in Israel. Don't quite know what they got in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. But the idea of women's lingerie coming out of an old-time joke from department stores that were made big in major cities in the United States, as well as London. There's an entire series, Mr. Selfridge, that was on PBS that was all about a department store in the early 1900s, right? Like in London, run by an American. And that was the kind of stuff they would talk about. That's where this kind of pop culture reference is coming from. Yes, it's pop culture reference. It may not have transferred across into that particular realm. That's okay. But does that mean that like you are quite shaken by what was said? Probably not. If that's what triggers you, then you are clearly in the wrong world. You can't go into academia and be like, I am upset at everyone. No, you can. This is 2018. That happens. It does happen. It really happens. Now, he says here that, like you, I'm strongly opposed to the exploitation, coercion, or humiliation of women. As such evils continue, it seems to me to make sense to direct our attention to real offenses, not those that are imagined or marginal. Ooh, burn. By making a complaint to the ISA that I consider frivolous and I expect will be judged this way by the Ethics Committee, you may be directing time and effort away from real offenses that trouble us both. Which is, again, that's a good response to come back with. That is a huge good response to come back with. The reason why? Because it's true. Like, all this time you spend arguing over pedantic drama and bullshit takes away from actual issues that could use your attention. Actually bettering the world. Getting upset at a guy for a women's lingerie joke in an elevator where it's part of pop culture, and not only London but the UK or USA, in a certain time setting, then it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Now, some people might argue, but Matt, she was offended. Isn't she entitled to her opinion? She is. She absolutely is entitled to her opinion, 100%. She upset at this, that's fine. But leave it at that. If the guy looked at you directly, stone cold in the eyes, and got up real close, you could smell the breath, and he's all women's lingerie, I could understand that as being like, that was creepy, that was out of place, that was completely uncalled for. 100%. Your personal space came across a little bit rapey, totally get it. But this is just sitting in an elevator, you don't know him from Adam, makes a joke, and then 4 hours later, you realize that you're upset and you go and you complain. Yeah. Probably shouldn't go to Twitter like freaking Adria Richards. Try to get him fired or booted out. Right? Because that's the next level of stuff we're dealing with here too. Now, it goes on to say here that it turns out that Lebow's confidence in the outcome was misplaced. Last week, the ISA Executive Director, Mark Boyer, informed Lebow that the disciplinary committee had found his elevator remarks offensive and inappropriate. An even more serious violation, Boyer said, was that you chose to reach out to Professor Sharoni and termed her complaint frivolous, because it was. And oh my God, Director Mark Boyer, could you be more cucked? And that's not a term I like to use like unironically, but I feel like it's unironic in this particular statement. Like, oh, she was offended by a letter, by a joke about women's lingerie. Yeah, that's how you want to spend your time. It's entirely frivolous. There's a reason why people in academia right now are laughing their asses off at this thing, and they're laughing their asses off at her because it's dumb. Now, Lebow was thus instructed to issue an unequivocal apology. Not surprising, he declined. In an email to colleagues, he described the finding as horrifying and chilling example of political correctness that encourages others to censor their remarks in fear of retribution. Now, Sharoni too worries that the incident will have a chilling effect, but in the opposite direction, because Lebow's decision to launch what she called a public smear campaign directed at her could deter others from filing complaints. And we hear this all the time. We hear this all the time, right? If a person is falsely accused of something and they come out to defend themselves, don't do that, because what that's going to do is it's going to make it so other people aren't going to go out there and and defend themselves. Or people are going to go out there and turn, and report these things because they don't want to be viewed from that perspective. They don't want a person to come out and defend themselves, and that's BS. If you are accused of something, I think you have a civic duty to defend yourself, especially when it comes to these kind of complaints and these kind of accusations. And I've been saying that for 4 fucking years now, and I'm never going to stop saying that. Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube is not 911. But in this case, there was no sexual assault. There was a guy on an elevator with some people that someone said, hey, call it some floors or whatever. And he's like, women's lingerie. And they go, ha, 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 ha. That's it. That's the joke. You may not have gotten it, and that's totally fine, but don't act like you shook, because you ain't. You are so 100% playing the victim here. Right? Oh, he's leading a smear campaign against him. You filed a frivolous complaint. That was frivolous. And as a result, he was then found guilty by a disciplinary committee that wanted an unequivocal apology from him, and him going like, nah, fuck this, and then he declined, which is the right thing to do. You being offended at a joke he said is all about you, not about him. He didn't direct it at anyone's particular. He didn't go after anyone specifically. He just made an old pop culture reference from long times past. Sorry that you being born in Romania and raised in Israel didn't get the joke. That is on you. And as people like you like to say to people like me, educate yourself. Might help you out in the long run. But that being said, curious to know your guys' thoughts about this one. Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Do you think this is horseshit? Do you think this is BS? Do you think that that she's right? Let's go with that. Do you feel that this professor is right in her complaint, or is it just frivolous? Is it just PC gone run amok? Or is it just part of the patriarchy, systemic sexism that's meant to hold women down in academia? These are things I'm curious to know. Now, granted, I obviously have my side. That's pretty apparent at this point, but I want to know what you guys have to think. So comment, also thumbs up the video if you haven't already. Please subscribe to the channel. Check back often for more content from me. In fact, if you want to see more content from me, you can do so right now.